Those of us who suffer from sleep paralysis are generally able to shake off the terrifying things we see and hear by telling ourselves we're merely hallucinating them. But what if you weren't the only one who witnessed that shadow being or demonic presence that visited you during sleep paralysis? What if someone in your bed or in your house saw it too? Would you still be so sure it was all in your head? The 3 people I interviewed for this video have doubts after their sleep paralysis visitors were witnessed by their family members.
There was a little boy looking into your window. Opened my door. She's yelling my name, and then she's saying, "Your grandmother is not responding." And then I'm like, "What do you mean she's not responding?"
My parents run into my room. What's all that slamming? What's all that slamming?
But we'll get to their stories in a minute. I've suffered from chronic sleep paralysis since I was a teenager. I've seen more quote-unquote sleep paralysis demons than just about anyone I know. Nowadays, sleep paralysis is a relatively well-known phenomenon, but when I was 17 years old, I had never heard of it and had absolutely no idea what the fuck was going on when it first happened to me. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and to make matters worse, an 8-foot-tall demonic specter started gliding through my doorframe, outstretched its hand, and held it over my chest for what felt like an eternity. After it was over, I researched my symptoms, read up on the concept of sleep paralysis, and chalked up my experience to hypnagogic hallucinations. For those of you who don't know, hypnagogic hallucinations are the dreamlike visions that occur within the transitional state of wakefulness and sleep. Fair warning, before I get knee-deep into the anecdotal spooky stuff, I want to paint a fair accounting of what modern sleep science has to say on this subject. According to current scientific consensus, these common reports of demons, ghosts, and other nefarious entities plaguing people during sleep paralysis are nothing more than hypnagogic hallucinations born out of the frantic emotional state most people enter into once they find themselves paralyzed in bed. The paralysis bit comes from a neural misfire of sorts. During the REM phase of sleep, our bodies become paralyzed to stop us from moving around too much. Sleep paralysis occurs when this REM-induced paralysis mechanism kicks in too soon or holds out too late, and we wind up fully paralyzed yet fully conscious. As to why this misfire occurs, we have only educated guesses. But that is, in brief summation, what science has to say on the matter. And for the longest time, that was enough for me. But since I was 17, I've had sleep paralysis on average like once a week, and in those 13 years, I've been visited by all manner of demonic entities and shadow beings and worse, and let's just say it's quite easy to rationalize about REM-induced paralysis or hypnagogic hallucinations before or after one of these experiences, but when there's a shape-shifting demon licking the side of your face and growling the most horrible guttural noises ever uttered into your ear as you fight against a full-body bind in bed, becomes much more difficult not to start thinking there might be other forces at play here. And while I don't believe there's anything inherently supernatural about sleep paralysis, I do think it might be possible that the vulnerable state it leaves us in could invite paranormal phenomena into our lives. After years of firmly reminding myself it's all in your head during my horrific sleep paralysis encounters, I heard an eyewitness testimony on a podcast called Radio Rental that shook the foundations of my belief system on this subject and scared the ever-living shit out of me.
We fall asleep without issue, and a couple hours later, I hear my husband next to me, and he's making these vocalizations that he makes when he has these sleep paralysis episodes. As I turn over to try and shake him, I felt like there is a presence. I distinctly remember checking on my daughter, pulling down the blanket, seeing her little belly moving up and down, putting it back on her before turning to Tim. And when I look over at him, there was a person, a woman, standing over him. I could see her staring directly at Tim. She had one hand on his chest, and it was like she was like breathing him in. Every time he would try to yell out, his breath would cause a disturbance. It would make her hair move, just nose to nose with him. I sped right past being scared and just to being angry. I leaned as close as I could into her, and I whispered to her and said, "He's mine. It slowly backed off of him. She backed into the corner and she just kind of evaporated. So he leaves work pretty early in the morning and he left before we woke up. And so I didn't see him until about 2:30 or 3 that afternoon. I finally asked, it's like, hey, did you have a sleep paralysis episode last night? And he kind of looks at me, he's like, yeah, I think I did. I then told him, it's like, I think I saw whatever bothers you. And he was like, no, you didn't see it. We were having like a dream. This isn't real. I was like, no, it was a woman. At that point, he kind of got quiet. I could tell it disturbed him, and I didn't want to push it.
Sleep paralysis stories are terrifying for the people who experience them, but for the people who hear them secondhand, they often sound like little more than bad nightmares with a novel twist. And for the vast majority of people who experience sleep paralysis, that's probably all they are. Because normally, the only person witnessing those shadow beings and demonic entities is the person currently experiencing sleep paralysis. At least, that's certainly always been the case for me. But this particular story on Radio Rental hit me so hard because it's the only time I had ever heard of a fully lucid person witnessing the sleep paralysis demon that haunts their sleeping loved one. If this woman could see and interact with this entity, maybe all of those entities that visit me when I'm alone in bed could have been witnessed by someone else nearby if they were up and about. And while I'm not here to discredit anybody or call anyone a liar, there is always the possibility that this woman was just making up a spooky story to get on a podcast you like to listen to. I mean, shit, it would definitely help me sleep easier at night if I could honestly believe this woman was just making stuff up or misremembering dreamed events. I mean, you can decide for yourself, but if I'm being completely honest with myself, I don't really hear a liar when I listen to that story. In any case, hearing that story sparked a sort of morbid curiosity within me. If she witnessed her partner's sleep paralysis demon, there had to be more people out there with similar stories. So I set out to try and find some of them and interview them for this video. I put some feelers out on my YouTube channel and made the rounds on applicable subreddits, and I ended up getting far more responses than I expected. Without further ado, these are the stories I've collected for this video.
So that night when I went to bed, I had gone to bed fairly early, which was uncommon. I don't know if that had anything to play into what happened, but I woke up maybe an hour or two later, and typically when I had sleep paralysis, I would see something in the corner or on a wall away from my bed. It was never close to me like that. And that night, I looked up above me and could see the thing that I would usually see. It was over me, directly over me. It felt like it was getting closer. And while it felt like it was getting closer, it felt like there was like a crushing weight on me. It was almost as if I was under a weighted blanket and feeling a light earthquake beneath me. I felt like I was shaking and heavy. It was close to me. I could see it almost in my face, and my closet door slams open, and within seconds, the thing that was above me was gone. My closet door slammed. At this point, I'm thinking this isn't sleep paralysis. I have to be just in a very vivid dream because this has never happened before. And I'm sitting there. I still can't move. My parents run into my room. What's all that slamming? What's all that slamming? I'm scared. I'm crying. I can't move. I don't know what's going on. They're comforting me, and I kind of just fall back asleep. It wasn't until the next morning, talking with my mom, she was like, yeah, your door slammed really hard twice. We didn't know what was wrong. I really don't know what it could have been. It's never happened before, and I haven't had anything that extreme happen since then. My mom 100% has had some supernatural experiences of her own, and my mom also suffers from sleep paralysis. So she was 100% trying to figure out with me like what it could have been because she knew it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. I was stuck in place. I watched everything happen, scared, and my parents come in my room made me kind of think like, if they heard this, if my mom and dad are reacting to this, was that something that could have actually harmed me? Was there something more that could have gone down? If this were just in my head, they wouldn't be in here reacting to the same thing that I'm, reacting to.
So this one sleep paralysis episode that you described on my Reddit post, can you just go into that particular episode in detail?
Yeah, so I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and the episode itself wasn't different from like any other sleep paralysis episode I ever had. I couldn't move, sense of dread, that whole thing. And I saw the silhouette of a little boy, maybe like 10 years old, just hanging out in that window, like on the outside of that window, looking into my room. And that in and of itself wasn't weird because, I had sleep paralysis all the time. I didn't really think anything of it. But the next day, my mom mentioned to me just out of the casually, she was like, "Oh, I had a nightmare last night that there was a little boy looking into your window," and that freaked me out.
That's so scary. Your mom seeing the same thing that you saw, did that change your perception of what sleep paralysis could possibly be?
Yeah, I think it did because, I didn't think there was any kind of paranormal stuff too because, like, I was the kind of kid I had a lot of nightmares. It's just too much, like, of a coincidence to be a coincidence. The other thing is she saw him in the window that I saw him too. She didn't see him in the back window. She specifically saw him at the side window where I saw him.
How did your mom react when you told her about it? Was she like buying into the fact that it could be a supernatural occurrence, or was she like, oh, it's just a coincidence?
I mean, we didn't really talk about it after that because we were both just so weirded out. It's like the kind of thing where it's so weird you kind of just don't want to think about it or talk about it. But she does kind of believe in the paranormal. Like she believes that there might be something to the paranormal. So she was kind of freaked out by it too.
This was the only time something like this happened to you?
Yeah. Like I said, I had a lot of sleep paralysis in that house like years after I'd stopped having them. And this one until, my mom also shared my hallucination. There was nothing different about it. So I lay down and I'm watching the door and I feel this like dark entity, this dark energy like come into my room, comes right by my bedside. I'm completely awake. My eyes are open and everything, and I just internally was saying, "Nope, not me, not tonight. Like, you better leave." And then I felt it leave, like my room. 30 seconds later, it's in my mom's room, and I hear her like having sleep paralysis and like moaning and groaning and stuff. And I jump up and I have to go wake her up, and then that's when I realized like we just experienced the same entity, and it just couldn't get to me, so it went to her. I go to sleep. I started having intense tingles, and it feels like a sort of like a gong, like hit my head. And that's how I know that I'm falling into sleep paralysis usually. And then that's when I thought to myself, okay, I wonder if my grandmother's right with praying or something. So I'm like, let me just say a prayer or something. The second I started saying a prayer, it's like it didn't like it. And then I did it again, and it felt like something grabbed my legs, flipped me over, and like was dragging me. And then I just kept saying, "No, no, no! You're not gonna take me. I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Like I'll give you anything. Just let me go to the astral. Let me do something else." It's like it felt like a contract sort of thing. So I did my thing in the astral, and I come back and I hear a knock on my door. It's like 2 in the morning, and they say my name. I thought it was my grandmother or her nurse or something. So I go and I open the door and there's no one there. I think, okay, no, I'm just crazy. I go to sleep. I have like kind of a bad dream, and I wake up thinking all of a sudden, I hope nothing happened to my grandmother. I hope she's okay. And then I'm like, no, 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 you're crazy. Maybe about an hour later, her nurse does knock on my door. She's yelling my name, and then she's saying, your grandmother is not responding. And then I'm like, what do you mean she's not responding? And she's like, her legs are not responding. And I go into her room. She's on the floor. Like she fell all of a sudden. It really worried me. So I just sit there with her, holding her hand and stuff. And then I felt a dark energy again. I told her nurse, pass me her Bible. My grandmother loves her Bible. She just always carries it with her. I open a verse and I read it. And then I look up and I see this dark shadow person just leave the room. And like I said, it was completely lit up with fluorescent lighting. And that's the second instance where it comes to me, I say no, and then it goes to the next person.
When you said this entity or whatever pulled you out of the bed, do you feel like that might have happened to your grandma?
She's watched 24/7, right, with her nurse, and then she said that she just all of a sudden just went down.
Did she tell you anything weird that happened that night, or?
She was really scared that night, I remember. And she kept telling me, and I like, please sleep with me in my bed. Just stay with me tonight. And I'm like, oh, dude, everything's okay. Everything's fine. It's like she knew something was gonna happen, and I knew something was gonna happen. It's just wrong.
So again, while I don't think there's anything inherently supernatural about sleep paralysis, I do think it's possible that people with chronic sleep paralysis could be more likely to experience paranormal phenomena during these episodes. I mean, think of it this way. Science is yet to provide a full accounting of what dreaming actually is, let alone its function in the human mind. To my mind, there's still so much left unanswered about the nature of consciousness itself that it seems sort of stubborn and close-minded to just deride any worldview that leaves a little room for the metaphysical or mysterious as naive and unserious. I asked each of the interviewees about how these experiences have shaped their opinions on the possibility of supernatural phenomena occurring during sleep paralysis.
It definitely is a scary thought. I never thought that my sleep paralysis would ever end up involving anyone else. I mean, I used to tell people about it. Everyone knew what it was. But having an experience where others were able to react and hear what I heard, and, you know, that makes me think, if they had come in any sooner, would they have been able to see what I was seeing? Like, there's so many questions that come up with them just hearing the event that makes me think, like, could this been of something more? Could something bigger have been going on?
Yeah, I think most of my sleep paralysis is just, can be explained by science. It's the same thing where, like, when you're falling asleep, you hear like a big bang, but it didn't actually happen. My mom dreaming about the little boy in my window on the same night that I saw a little boy at my window is just too weird. I think that you have to be in a vulnerable state, like mentally and spiritually, to even invite sleep paralysis to come in. I noticed with myself, like when I'm at like a low vibration, I'm just not making the best decisions in my life and stuff, is usually when these things kind of attach themselves to me and I feel like I'm being spiritually attacked.
And with that, I'd like to deeply thank everybody who participated in the making of this video by speaking to me, the Radio Rental Podcast, and everybody watching who made it this far. Like and sub for more content like this, and I'll catch y'all soon.